Was the last album that dropped that you loved? And by loved, I mean you played it over and over. If it wasn't for the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, where would hip hop be right now? Like, I was reading this article on Vulture. It's called Rap is Doing Just Fine on the charts. It was published like a month ago, December 2024. Let's just take a quick skim of this article. It says, like a Buick Grand National, Kendrick Lamar keeps revving his way onto the Hot 100. I just hate the way like these types of journalists write, but whatever. Rapper earned his third #1 of 2024 with Squabble Up off his album GNX, leading a decisive takeover of the charts while also dethroning Shaboozey. All songs in Kendrick's latest project topped the Billboard Hot 200. It's not just another big win for Kendrick, it's the latest sign that rap's numbers are doing just fine. So if you guys remember a couple years ago, not even a couple years ago, maybe last year, there was this whole thing in the hip hop community about, yo, is hip hop dying? It's not on the charts. There was like a 7-month period, maybe more, where no hip hop album was charting #1 until Lil Uzi Vert came up and dropped the Pink Tape. And that album was only #1 for like, I think it was like a couple of days to a week. Then before that, there was a long drought of rap songs not having any presence in that #1 spot. And then Doja Cat dropped Paint the Town Red, which was a #1 hit record. The author feels, yo, this shifted. Hip hop is back. Now, before we get to further in this article, I just want to say, I don't think hip hop is all the way back. Not just in terms of numbers. You know, me, I'm not a real big numbers guy, but in terms of just quality, I don't think it's back. And I think Kendrick's success often leads people to believe that, oh, all of hip hop is fine. Like, you'll hear people say, oh, the West Coast is up right now. The West Coast, Kendrick is up right now. Kendrick is doing all over the #1 charts in the billboards. So I think it's just interesting to see the shift from people saying, yo, hip hop, it's not charting. The #1 singles, then here comes Doja Cat. What about #1 albums? Then here comes Uzi Vert. People were kind of treating hip hop like it was on life support for about a year and a half, to now saying it's just doing fine on the charts. In 2023, Billboard watchers questioned whether the genre's commercial downturn had finally arrived. The first 7 months of the year came and went without a #1 album until Uzi Vert's Pink Tape broke the streak. I don't think, see, downturn, okay, commercial downturn, I think hip hop is going to have its ebbs and flows, but hip hop is not going to go anywhere. It's going to be, I don't want to say a permanent thing, but even if another genre is built, it's going to take pieces from hip hop. So hip hop is never going to fully die. First 7 months of 2023 came without a #1 hip hop album until Uzi Vert's Pink Tape broke the streak, but only for a single week. I just said that. Meanwhile, a record number of country songs were leading the Hot 100. Rap had been music's most dominant genre for years, but it's been cooling off. So here's the main point. 2024 proved these worries were overblown. It started with Kendrick's run of headline-making Drake disses, Like That, which spent 3 weeks at #1. Not Like Us debuted at #1. And also Drake charted. Family Matters went like #4. Lamar's beef with Drake turned those releases into blockbusters, and the charts responded accordingly. So notice all the successes that they're talking about in hip hop. Oh, hip hop is fine because it's all of, look what Kendrick did. Is hip hop doing great right now, or is Kendrick doing great? I mean, let's continue to read. Even before Kendrick's surprise drop, rap had already seen chart success this year with Tyler, the Creator's Chromacopia. This is facts. Facts! Chromacopia was a huge release. Logged 3 weeks on top of the Billboard Hot 200. I think it also sold something like 300K first week, which is amazing in 2024. The year's other projects felt almost as big, which is Future and Metro Boomin'. They had 2 chart-topping albums, We Don't Trust You, and I think the other one was called We Still Don't Trust You, which again, all this is like in the ether of the Drake beef. So even it's those Future and Metro Boomin', and it's not Drake or Kendrick, those albums are essentially diss albums to Drake. So I put all this together. I put all this in one clump. Eminem made a return with The Death of Slim Shady. Okay, people did like that album. Travis Scott put a 10-year-old mixtape on streaming. Nearly topped Sabrina Carpenter. Ye and Ty Dolla $ign, Kanye West, Ty Dolla $ign earned a #1 album. Okay, so if I were to remove anything to do with the Kendrick and Drake beef, because I personally don't think that Future and Metro album goes #1 twice without any Drake disses. Like, a big reason why that We Don't Trust You album, We Still Don't Trust You, whatever it was called, the album with Like That, a huge reason why it went #1 is because of the Like That record. I mean, so if we take that away, what does hip hop look like in 2024 without the Kendrick and Drake beef? I really think the Kendrick and Drake beef is like saved hip hop for 2024. And I've been feeling like not only commercially, but for a long time, I felt, really since 2021, I felt that hip hop quality wise took a huge drop off. And years later, it started to be reflected in the charts. Like, people aren't even listening to this as much. People are going to other genres, country music, pop music, Sabrina Carpenter, and all this other stuff. You know, Bad Bunny, Latin music. But I used to do these year-end lists on top5rapwebsite.com. And if you notice, I did them pretty much every year, but I stopped in 2021. Why did I stop in 2021? Because 2022 for me was just such a dull year musically. And I kind of anticipated this happening after 2018, because 2018 was such an amazing year for hip hop. Great releases, amazing releases in 2018. Pusha T, Daytona, Fonte, No News is Good News, Nipsey, Victory Lap, Luke Bay, Drogas Wave, Mac Miller, Swimming, Tana Talk 3, Currency and Harry Fraud, The Mariner, Supreme, Blind and Tell by Westside Gun, some raps, Earl Sweatshirt, some rap songs this year was so great. Earl Sweatshirt's Some Rap Songs was number 12. If Earl Sweatshirt's Some Rap Songs came out last year, that's arguably the best album in terms of quality that year. Like, Everything's Fine, Jean Grey, and Quality. Book of Ryan, number 13. Like look at this list. Hermit and the Recluse, which is Cobb, Brownsville Cobb, Orpheus versus the Sirens. If this comes out 2024, this is easy best album of the year. J-Rock Redemption, and look all the way down in the 20s. Renaissance Man by Mike. Fire in the Clouds by Currency was a great album. KOD by J. Cole. Scorpion by Drake, which is one of the few Drake albums that I like. Like, anything really in the top, you know, Mick Jenkins, Pieces of a Man, anything here in this top, let's say 23, would be the best album if it came out in 2024. Then you fast forward to 2021, I had J. Cole, The Offseason, as the best album of the year, but Lil Sims had a great album, Ka had a great album, Mike Disco, Doja Cat, Bruiser Wolf, Nas, Magic. Let me ask the listener, what was the last hip hop album that came out that you loved? Like, you played it front to back multiple times. For me, I would say it was either Miles Davis, the Miles Davis album by Blue and Exile, or for sure Nas and Hit Boy, Magic 1. That first Nas and Hit Boy album, man, I played that. That was literally the last album that I loved, that Nas and Hit Boy album. Yeah, so this Nas album here, this was the last album that came out that I loved. And this came out, it says 2022. I'm pretty sure this album came out the end of 2021. Let me look that up. And then this isn't the blue. Actually, I thought I had the Blue and Exile Miles album, but I don't, which is strange. I thought I had it. I need to go buy that record. But this is another Blue album, The Color Blue. This came out like in, I think 2021 also. Yeah, 2021. Yeah, Magic by Nas, yeah, December 24th, 2021. What was the last album that dropped that you loved? And by loved, I mean you played it over and over. I feel, and I'm someone obviously that buys a lot of music. So sometimes I think, am I losing passion for good music? I'm like, no, because I still find stuff that I like that's not hip hop. I spend a lot of money on music. Like, I'm looking at my record collection here. Like, I need to do something about this. Like, I have like crates. I have so many crates, it's like almost touching the ceiling. I don't even know if I can get another crate. I need to find room for it. I need a proper way to store these vinyls and CDs. I have a lot of CDs. So obviously I have a passion for music, but I cannot stomach the hip hop music that's coming out. And really, this is an issue that started happening in 2022. I felt 22 was just such a dry year. And sometimes I'm looking at these years in hip hop with the context of listening to hip hop super intently since like 2010, since 07, 08 is when I really started studying hip hop. So when I listen to music, I'm kind of comparing it to previous years and previous releases, and I'm like, this stuff doesn't stand out. So I want to get to a tweet and shout out Isaiah Silva. I said just name some great releases since 2022. And this is something that people do. They'll name the artist that dropped instead of the album. Or if you told me, give me a good release from 2010, I'll be like, Flockavelli. I'll be like, Pilot Talk. You remember the projects because the projects are great. Or name something that came out that's rap in the 90s that was fire. People wouldn't just say Ice Cube. They would say America's Most Wanted. They won't just say Nas. They will name the project Illmatic. Obviously, I know all these artists that he names are talented, and I'm not picking on you, Isaiah Silva. I'm doing this because this is something that people do often. They'll name the artists, and we all know all these artists are talented. Lupe, Vince Staples, Future, Pete Rock. A reason why their first motion isn't to name the album is because people don't know these albums. People didn't listen to them. These albums weren't really extensively spoken about in the hip hop community. You watching this, right? What was the name of Rhapsody's last album? What was the name of the Dog Pound's last album? What was the name of that Lloyd Banks album that came out in the last 2 years? Ice Cube album. I'm sure you guys know the Ice Cube album because it just came out like a couple weeks ago, right? So to his credit, he goes and he names the actual albums. And some of these I agree with. Samurai, like if I were to pick, let's say, the best albums to come out since 2022. Great albums, like truly great albums, I could probably name them on one hand, maybe two. Samurai by Lupe Fiasco is one of them. I think that was a great album. And it's on par with Lupe's other work. It's not on the bottom percentile. It's great for Lupe. Great work. GNX by Kendrick. I'll add that in there too. GNX, good album. It's not the conceptual, thematic album that Kendrick normally drops, but it's still good music. Dark Times by Vince Staples. I actually agree with this. If you told me to name like a couple albums that I thought were really great since 2022, these would be my three. Samurai, GNX, Dark Times. Chromacopia, I'm not a fan of Tyler's music like that. You guys know that. But a lot of people liked it, so I'll allow it. Here's where it gets kind of shaky though. Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q. When this dropped, there wasn't a full consensus that this was a great album. Blue Lips. And neither was the Crash Talk album that came out like in 2020 or 2021. Might Delete Later, there's not a consensus. Like these two albums are like mixed amongst fans. Blue Lips and Might Delete Later. Like people aren't in love with these albums writ large. You might meet people every so often who really loves Might Delete Later by J. Cole and Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q. But it's not on par with the other stuff they've released. Like you don't see the type of love for Blue Lips that you saw for HNC or that you saw for the Blank Face. And you don't see the type of love for Might Delete Later that you saw for the Off Season or for anything else. So this is kind of how I'm looking at these albums. Alligator Bites Never Heal, which is Doechii project. I thought it was a good album. Again, you guys like Doechii a lot more than I do. I just haven't heard anything that's made me super enthralled over her like y'all are, but I do recognize her talent. And then we go on and on. Marciology, it was cool. But this album, The Skeleton Key, like the way I'm judging it, this ain't on par with like Behold the Dark Horse or Rosebud's Revenge 2. Like this is like Rock Marcy's weaker work that he's put out. So we can name the artists who dropped, like, and yeah, all these are talented, but what did they drop though? Are they dropping their best work? Is it like on par with what they normally drop? So that was my beef with, and this is just this vinyl is, I haven't even opened it there. It got the Obi strip. Like, yo, this is a great album. But that's how I've been feeling since 2022. And people always tell me the same thing. Oh, you're not searching hard enough. It's because you're not listening to underground music. I listen to a whole bunch of underground music, but cool. Then the charts started to reflect it. People aren't really listening to this genre as much. I find it interesting that this article, they're saying rap is doing just fine on the charts, but most of what they mention is Kendrick. Kendrick's doing fine. He's mentioned 9 times, and yeah, to their credit, they did mention Tyler. That's a great album for Tyler. Even an anomaly for Tyler in terms of like sales, that was a huge album for him. You got Future and Metro is mentioned, but that's all with the Kendrick and Drake stuff. You got Eminem, which is of course he's gonna top the charts anytime he drops. And you got Ye Dollar. So I like this site with your music. So Blue Lips, this is what I mean by like Blue Lips it was mixed. Like to name Blue Lips as one of the great albums that's come out since 2022, like people didn't feel like that when it came out. And I like Rate Your Music because it's kind of like a Metacritic for music where users, regular people can come on and rank and rate albums. Been using this site for over a decade. People ranked Blue Lips number 378 of all the albums that came out in 2024. It was ranked number 378. Okay. That's not really an overwhelming amount of people saying this is a great album. And let's just look at 2023, for example. Y'all tell me if this is quality release, because people would tell me I'm crazy. I'm not be having controversial opinions. People would tell me I'm crazy. You crazy. You ain't listening. It's because I listen to all this. I know all these artists y'all mentioned. Like, I listen to all this. Been listening to them. Billy Woods, been listening to him. History will absolve me. Been listening to him. That was my first Billy Woods album. Y'all tell me if this is album of the year material for you. Apparently, the best album to come out in 2023 was JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, Scaring the Hoes. Shout out to Danny Brown. Shout out to JPEG. What did y'all think of this album? Then you got Billy Woods and Kenny Siegel. This duo is so crazy to me because I reviewed their album Hiding Places, and it was really the most difficult album I've listened to. They dropped a joint called Maps. What did y'all think of that? Arm & Hammer, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Billy Woods and Elucid. What did y'all think of this? Burning Desire by Mike. I actually reviewed this album. This is a good album. Danny Brown, Coranta. Joey Valence and Bray. Earl and Alchemist Wadir, which I thought this was a cool album. I thought it could have been better. Like, if you got Earl and the Alchemist, like, based on the prior stuff they've done, it's like, why? I don't know. No hate, though. Yeah, Fahim, Dump God, Reloaded. I mean, and then we talking about these are the best of the best hip-hop albums of 2023. To me, let's just compare that to like a year. Let's just do 2020. And 2020 was a slow year because of COVID. Yeah, Alfredo by Alchemist and Freddie Gibbs. Run the Jewels 4. Blue in Exile, Miles. I just spoke about this album. Navy Blue, COD, Ascendance of Cain. Like, already the releases there's a huge jump in quality. Like, these releases are way stronger. Run the Jewels 4, Descendants of Cain, Alfredo, which is Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist. Conway, From a King to a God, which was his first release post Griselda, if I remember correctly. Reasonable Drought by Stove God. Like, these releases are way stronger than what we just looked at. Map, Scaring the Hoes, even Burning Desire, Coranta, I mean, which are fine. These are great artists, but I'm just saying. Let's look at 2024. So last year, apparently JPEG Mafia just dropped 2 albums of the year because he's up here again. I laid down my life for you, JPEG Mafia. I've reacted to many JPEG Mafia albums. He's a good artist, but album of the year, I've never felt JPEG Mafia was ever the type of person, ever the type of the rapper to drop album of the year. GNX by Kendrick, which is fine. Rich Ass Haitian by Makami. This is probably really the best album that came out last year. You got the Joey Valence and Bray, which I did a review on. You got the Tyler Chromacopia. You got Cod Thief Next to Jesus, which I thought this album was, I still need to give him more listens because it's Ka. I mean, he's very deep. I just thought the mixing was a little not as good as on his other albums. It's kind of hard to hear what he's saying at some points. Samurai by Lupe. Dark Times by Vince Staples. Good albums. Almighty Sosa by Chief Keef, which I also did a review on that. Thought it was cool. But the quality, I don't know. I don't know if the quality is there for me. Then you compare that to something like 2018. Kids See Ghosts, which is Kanye and Kid Cudi. Some rap songs by Earl. Daytona by Pusha T. Veteran by JPEG Mafia. This is like probably the closest JPEG Mafia, in my opinion, has ever gotten to an album of the year. Dial-It, Playboy Cardi, Mac Miller, Swimming, Tana Talk 3, Ka, Hermit and Recluse, Orpheus vs. Siren, Saba, Care For Me. Like, this, like, No Name, Room 25, Supreme Blientele. Like, we still going down the list and we still naming projects. Master Ace even dropped that year. Like, Makami and the God Fahim, Dump Legends. Yay by Kanye West, Jid, DiCaprio 2, Astro World by Travis Scott, like Behold the Dark Horse by Rock Marcy, Drogas Wave. We can even go on page 2 and it's still fire there. Pink Side Food dropped. This is a great album by Jean Grey and Kelly Chris. Chaos by Muggs and DJ Muggs, Rock Marcy, Fetty. Bulletproof Love by Makami, Duck Season. This is rare, actually. Duck Season by Makami and God Fahim, Mike, Renaissance Man. Like, I think you guys get what I'm saying. I think my standards are too high. I think I need to bring my expectations down. Even if we just not even talking numbers, like that article I was reading, they're talking numbers. Even just quality, it's severely down. And I made a video called, New York rap has lost the plot. And there's a whole bunch of New Yorkers in the comments saying, well, it's not just us. The West Coast did it. I tried to tell them, I made a similar video about the West Coast. New York rap has completely lost their identity. They still have good rappers coming out of there, and they still have popular rappers like Ice Spice, popular rapper. But they don't really have an identity. They're like wearing someone else's clothes right now. And on the West Coast, like I said earlier, people say, oh, the West Coast is up. The West Coast is up. No, Kendrick is up. Kendrick is up, and he's trying to pull some people up with him. But do you future of West Coast rap? Yo, J. Cole just turned 40. That means Drake is next and Kendrick's next. They're knocking on the door of 40 years old, which probably means they're going to stop rapping within the next 5 to 10 years. Who on the West Coast is coming to take those reins? See, Game, pass it to Kendrick, right? Before Kendrick, it was Game. And before Game, there was a huge drought on the West Coast for a while. Snoop and them, and Ice Cube, they didn't really have, there wasn't a solid person to pass it to. Then here comes Game by way of 50 Cent, G-Unit and all that. But Game does a great job with it. Then he passes it to Kendrick, who did an excellent job with it. Do you think one of these dudes that was featured on GNX is going to hold those reins next? Like, the West Coast has a huge problem in that there's no one to pass the baton to. And I wouldn't even say a lot of regions have that problem, because in Atlanta, they got a ton of young rappers who have some buzz and who people like. I feel they have that in Detroit somewhat. Even in Chicago, West Coast really doesn't like. You think AZ Chike is going to come and carry the reins for the West Coast? You think Lefty Gunplay is he's up next? Crazy, scary, spooky, hilarious. Like, now there are some people, that I like from the West Coast that I think are talented. Like X4, I think he has an interesting delivery. He has an interesting voice. Obviously, Draco the Ruler was the one who was next. Draco the Ruler was not even next. He was already on, but he was going to take that next step. Unfortunately, he passed away. Even Dodie 6, he has some songs that I like, but West Coast has an issue too. East Coast issue is they don't have an identity. They're wearing other people's clothes. They got somebody else's watch on. They got somebody else's shoes and socks. They're wearing somebody else's drawers. West Coast issue is we don't really have someone else to pass it to. We got rappers, but who's the one? Like, who's the one? Draco the Ruler was the one, to be honest. But he was too involved in like the street stuff. He couldn't shake it. And then a lot of those dudes who was featured on the GNX album, they're also in the street stuff and they can't shake it. It's not even they can't. They won't. They refuse to. And if you're going to be a star on that next level, you got to be able to get past that. But again, I think it's just because maybe my expectations are too high. Because when I was coming up, when I was in junior high school, the West Coast, we had a bunch of guys we could have passed it to. We had so many good young rappers who had range musically. It wasn't just all gang stuff. They had range. We had Kendrick. We had Dom Kennedy. Game was still going on. We had Nipsey. We had YG. Ty Dolla $ign, he was singing and rapping at the time, and Mustard was on the scene. Pac Div, You and I, Breezy Lovejoy, who y'all know today as Anderson .Paak. We had all these people just ready. Great music. It was just questioning who's going to be the one. There's a lot of them, but who's the one? And I think I'm comparing that to nowadays. We don't have that. I don't think the South has that issue, but I think the South in Detroit a little bit, they just have a bunch of people making the same music. Like, they're making all the same type of music. Like, they all sound very similar. Like Lil Keed sound like Lil Goddard, who sound like Young Thug, who sounds like this dude, who sounds like that dude. Like, it's like a formula. They're Control V, Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. And I think Detroit's a little bit the same way, but they have their sound at least, which the East Coast, New York, let's say the East Coast, which New York doesn't have their sound. At least Atlanta and Detroit and them, they got their sound. New York don't have their sound. And then West Coast don't really got anybody else next up. I don't know, it's just not hitting the same no more for me. I think really it's just, I happened to start really studying hip hop at a time like in 2007, 2008. At a time where there was a huge influx of great new artists. And then also the hip hop I was raised on in the 90s, great new artists. That's what I was hearing as a kid. And then also from my parents' knowledge, which goes all the way back to the inception of hip hop. So I had all that context. And then to see where hip hop is now, it's just like who's next? Hip Hop Harry, who's next? Who's next? If Kendrick versus Drake didn't have it, a lot more people would be feeling how I'm feeling, which I started feeling in 2022. Like, the quality, I'm not even just talking charts. The charts, the numbers, you can go back and see that people were saying that hip hop is completely falling off the charts. Like, it's already documented in terms of singles and in terms of album. I'm talking about just in terms of quality. And even though all these great artists are dropping, I just don't think they're dropping great. Like, I don't even think the work isn't comparable to what they normally drop, in my opinion. To end the video on a positive note, the albums that did come out between 2022 and 2024 that I thought were on par with what the artist usually drops. Vince Staples, Dark Times, great album. Lupe Fiasco, Samurai, great album. GNX by Kendrick, great album. What do y'all think? Like I said, what was the last album that came out that y'all loved. By love, I mean it was on constant repeat. Kendrick aside, don't say Kendrick. Because my whole premise is if the Kendrick and Drake thing didn't happen, I think a lot more people will realize like, yo, the quality in hip hop is down. Kendrick Drake don't happen, GNX probably don't happen. What was the last hip hop album y'all really love like that? Like be for real. This will be it for me. Be the Nas Magic and it'll be Blue, but the Blue in Exile Miles. This is a good one too though. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Top 5 rapwebsite.com. Peace.